Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome to the Resilience Resourcing Podcast. This is a connection space where badass women share their real on their way to resilience. Each week, I have the pleasure of spotlighting women dominating in a diverse landscape of fields ranging from performance neurotraining to film and all in between. You will get to know the unique qualities these women each carry and how connecting with these empowering women's stories bring about camaraderie and in turn empower you towards your unique dreams and goals.
But I feel like the biggest tool that any powerful organization or person can use on a human to get them to feel, subservient or less than is shame, right? And it can be as subtle, like as you were saying, Holly, like through music. And it can be woven into these little tiny teachings here and there. But if you can make someone feel shame, then you can really, you can get them to do almost anything, because it's a very, very powerful feeling and emotion that keeps you in that threat system, right?
Yeah, it's a manipulative tactic. And I think I started to see it even more so. I mean, I don't think it started this way, but I feel like it more and more when churches became political, when things got more about money and revenue and power and everything that corrupts, it almost became a manipulative tactic to get numbers to go up, and things like that. So it sounds like you went through basically trying to understand and feel good about feeling good, which sounds so, like, I feel like some people who haven't walked that might be confusing, but like I completely relate to that. And so, basically you learned how to feel comfortable in your own skin. Is that what you would say it is?
Well, and I think it's like you were saying, like it's not a one and done thing, right?
Yeah.
It's a constant. There are days where I feel shame. There are days where I feel guilt. There are days where I do not feel confident at all, where I'm questioning everything. And I think, okay, I've left the church. I've screwed up my kids' future. I ripped the rug out from underneath them. And I don't know what I'm doing as a parent now that I don't have the framework of the church. I don't really have a clear-cut parenting plan to provide for them. And there were plenty of days like that. And I have to kind of step back down and open up the perspective again. And I have to unshame all of these beliefs that I have about myself, that I've formed through these thought patterns that I've, basically ingrained in my brain through repetition, that I can't do this without the church. I can't be a good parent unless my kids have other LDS friends. My kids won't have a successful life unless their friends are all LDS. I can't go to heaven unless X, Y, and Z, right? All of these thoughts that I've been fed over my life that have formed my belief system, right? So it's not something that can just be done overnight, but if you learn the tools of unshaming and you learn the tools of uncovering those thoughts and really learning why your brain is giving you those, why, not like being angry at yourself, because everything that your brain offers you is some kind of intelligence.
Yeah. So
there's a reason why it's offering you that thought. So don't just discard it. Don't just think that, okay, this is nothing. I'm just being mean to myself. Like, acknowledge it, become aware of it, become curious as to why your brain is offering that. And then like have compassion towards it, towards yourself. Because that's where the beauty is. That's where you regain your power. That's where healing is. And that's really where I have found that joy that I have been seeking my whole life. I'm finally connecting with myself. I'm finally connecting with little Leah, with inner Leah.
It's
And
that playfulness almost, I learned that early on in therapy, the curiosity versus judgment, like be curious with yourself, stop judging it, just be curious. And I feel like that's a childlike thing. Like to become like a child again in the way that you treat yourself. Because that's the thing. We lose more and more of that even in our education system. And I learned that in college is, oh, we've like made our education system just like this very systematic, one size fits all kind of thing. And that honestly is to our detriment in a lot of ways. It gets us through, it gets us, to a certain goal in a quick amount of time. And it's, the way the system has been put together. But getting rid of that play and that curiosity, that is one of the biggest factors of learning, and I think even of connecting to yourself, because when you're playful, you're doing it in a fun, excited, I want to learn more way. And it's connected to who you truly are. I mean, like, I watch a little boy, and like even when he just like as he's learning, like that's my favorite stage with kids, is that age where they're going from baby to toddler, because they're starting, you just see it in their eyes, like they're starting to be like super curious, and like they just want to touch and do all this stuff. And like we used to just be like, no, no, don't do this, and we're just very like, it's our culture. It's truly like we we don't have time to deal with nonsense, as we call it, or that playfulness, because we just want to quickly, you know, get to the next stage. And I think that's sad. We lose a lot when we don't allow ourselves to just play, have fun, be curious, compassionate. In fact, um this is kind of funny. This is totally what I would say a God thing, but I'm having somebody later on my podcast that shares this thing on TikTok called God nudges, and she shares it based off of her kid and parenting and the things that basically she'll be doing with her kids, and then it's like God's like telling her that, which he's like, you know it's kind of like a play thing. And that's what I've been noticing, even watching a child, is having this like, oh, I take such good care of this child. Like I make sure he's got really good nutrition. I get him outside to play. I'm really interactive with him and give him my full attention. But why do we not do that for ourselves? Like we've been so accustomed to do for others, but
serving,
but
sacrifice.
we don't do, yeah, it's like we totally lose that, like, and we can't. We literally, if anybody's done any amount of therapy or work on yourself, you learn very quickly that you can't help anybody else before you help yourself. That whole, line about put your oxygen mask on first before you can't help somebody else if you're not breathing, like it's that same type of thing. So that's just super significant, because playfulness and compassion, like these are things we give to children. We know that it's necessary, yet it's either we stop giving it to ourselves, or we just the system takes it out of us, like to where that's not a part of us anymore.
We're not even really taught how, right?
Yeah. Are there some like, and I'm sure like if somebody, ends up seeing you as a life coach, I'm sure with all these tools and stuff, the things that you've used and have helped you, that you will be helping other people walk through the process. But are there little nuggets of, I don't know, information that has helped kind of spearhead that ability to be playful with yourself? Like, is there something you tell yourself, or is there like some kind of a little bit of a process that you go through when you recognize yourself being critical?
Yeah, definitely. So one thing that I have found to be helpful with my emotions, especially, is to give them a name, like
Mm-hmm.
actually personify them.
Mm-hmm.
And giving them an identity helps you to recognize that you are not that emotion. You are not your thought, to separate yourself from it.
Yeah.
so that you're not feeling the shame attached to it, first of all, right? But then also being able to open up a dialogue with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you're imagining having a dialogue with it, but it helps your brain kind of process what you would say to it and how you would be able to communicate with it if it was a separate entity. So like if you think about like self-doubt, which is the one that I struggle with the most, like I actually call myself the queen of self-doubt. Like if I'm an expert on anything, it's self-doubt.
Yeah.
Like I'm regular every day, 1,000 times. I doubt myself. I doubt my abilities. I doubt everything about myself. And so giving it a name, and you can give it a name of, some of my clients have given it the name of their mom because their mom is super critical of them, or like a relative that has been critical, or they give it like their own name, but like as a little, like little Leah or little Holly or whatever. Mine is Gina, short for Regina from Mean Girls.
I love that is freaking genius. Oh my gosh.
I
Love
love
it.
that movie. And
Yeah.
because
Me too.
my inner critic, my self-doubt is seriously so brutally mean, I'm like, that's Regina. So I call her Gina. So when I started becoming aware of my self-doubt and the thoughts that actually do come in, I was like, okay, Gina, anytime that comes in, I talk to Gina, and I'm not like, oh, you're such a witch or whatever. We don't fight, but I'm like, okay, hi, Gina. You know, I hear you. I'm listening. It's interesting that you say that. And then I just kind of like counter with her, like why I disagree with her. I'm like, I hear you. I'm listening. I'm allowing you to say what you need to say, like
Yeah.
allowing it to be there. Don't just like discard it and avoid it. Like if your body's offering it up, if your brain's offering it up, it needs to be heard. So
Yeah.
let it be heard, even if it's negative, let it be heard, allow it to be said, and then you counter it and you introduce the self-compassion and you say, okay, this is how you feel. This is how I feel. I think you're wrong because this and this and this. And introducing that dialogue
Wow.
really helps create that momentum for moving forward, because what happens is we get stuck.
Mm-hmm.
We have these thoughts and they just stay there because we
Yeah.
don't allow them to like process through. We don't allow the emotion that's in these thoughts to process through.
It's like the whack-a-mole. Like the more you keep hitting it, the more
Yes.
it keeps popping back up because you're not like they say that with emotions, any emotions, like feel them because the more you keep pushing them away or denial or saying no, the more it's like you have to let that. I think my last guest on my podcast talks about the wave. Like you just have to let it happen. Know that it's okay not to feel okay. Know it's okay to have these feelings, but know that they don't define you. And like the way that you just said that, like it's so true because it also prepares you for when other literal people, not just the Gina in your mind, but like the literal people that are going to have a lot of, I mean, we see it all over social media, all the negative things that people say all the time. You actually have a way to come at them without being reactionary. But like you said, like treating her like that in your mind is preparing you even for other people. Like when you get that strong in yourself, it's only going to make you stronger when other opposition comes its way because like I just think that's super powerful. Like that works in so many different aspects. And I think it's so important that you are curious and you don't just shut it up, but like cuz I think we've kind of always been taught to um you know, push things away that we don't like, basically, because you don't want to hear it, kind of like shut your ears, I don't want to hear it, kind of a thing. But like the more you do that, it is like that stupid whack-a-mole. It's gonna keep coming up until you deal with it. Um, that is very, very, very good. Like, wow, you have so much wisdom. You really do. Like you said, like wisdom comes from your intuition. It comes from the things you've learned, and um we too often think we don't trust ourselves. We don't trust that we have what we need on the inside we're intellectual beings. We we constantly are processing information, and the more we learn, fact, this kind of sad way of thinking of it, but the more we learn to not be curious and let our thoughts and let ourselves, use our frontal lobe, the part that makes us human, um, the further we're gonna go from being able to uh use our brain. Like, using your brain is very important when it comes to memory and
Mhm.
all the stuff that we talked about previously with traumatic brain injuries. Like, it's almost defective and more, something I realized when I was processing a lot of my trauma with, like, my car accident and things like that. I thought for a while, oh, this all has to go back to, like, this severe traumatic brain injury that I had. And definitely that's part of my story. 100% had a huge effect on my life. I mean, when your brain is hit, just like you went through, like, it's something that definitely changes you. But there's a lot of trauma on top of that that happened because of that, or even not because of that, but just because of the community that I was a part of, the way that I was brought up to deal with the emotions of the after effect, like you talk about. You didn't even get to deal with those until you stepped out of that community because you were taught to not listen to yourself, deal with your own stuff. And my newest thing that I guess I wouldn't newest realization has been connect to yourself so that you can connect to others. Like, we're almost taught the opposite.
Mhm.
Like, connect to others so that you can feel good about yourself, so that you can, like, get that external validation. It's quite the opposite. You can't connect to anybody else at all if you don't first connect to yourself.
Mhm.
And, like, I just, you know, I actually was just telling a friend this who doesn't know you from anywhere, but it was my cousin, and I was like, there's something about this woman that I met that, like, you embody, like, without even talking to you very much, it's just your, like, energy. I don't know how else to explain it. You are very, like, aligned. Like, who you are is very um evident when you were in person. Like, you're very much who you are. Like, I, we see so much in this world of people trying to put on a persona or trying to act as if they are something, like the social media. Like, I'm going to present to you my perfect self. And that's why I do this so, like, uh raw, like, I like to be super real and keep things real because people need that to connect. They don't need to see the superficial perfect person. And, like, I just you really align, like, who you are just shows up. Like, you're just there. Like, there is no, like, pretense. And I feel like we've kind of gotten scared of that in our society for too long. We've wanted the pretense because it makes us feel more comfortable. um and I'm kind of curious, I guess, why so often we desire perfection, like, because it's not real.
I
Like,
do feel like there's a little bit of a shift coming though. I
mm,
think, and maybe it's just me
no, I
personally,
think
or
you're
like
right.
I feel like there's a shift. Like people are wanting a little bit less of that and wanting more of the real and more of the vulnerable because it's like you said, it's relatable. Like
Yeah.
the perfection, I think, is such a part of the patriarchy, and it's so hard to uphold, and it's just destroying people from the inside out. And people are just, they're done with that. They
I,
want to be who they are. They don't want to have to be held up to a standard anymore all the time. It's exhausting.
I think that it's totally the patriarchy. That's such a good way of, like, recognizing where it stems from. And, like, actually, you said, so this is interesting. I I remember you saying you spent some of your life or a good part of your life in France. Were you born in France?
No, that my mom is French. So
Okay.
I grew up there and here.
Both. Yeah.
Well, both, yeah, both in
Um,
France.
and I mean, Europe is where the patriarchy kind of originated. And then, America, we have our own democracy, but it really has become, I had this conversation with my sister a while back, and, she's traveled all over Europe and loves Europe. And, everybody idolizes Europe because Europe is where everything began and there's so much history. And I haven't even visited Europe, and I want to go because there's so much history and like beauty there. But like if we look back at the patriarchy and like where these kind of things originate from, I mean, I'm sure it goes way back, even way before Europe was even a thing, Romans and even before that. But like, and I'm a history buff, so I just kind of nerd out on that kind of stuff. But when I think about it, like we there were kings, and we had that kind of a thing, and people came to America wanting democracy and people to have more, like everyday people to have more of a say. But if we look at what America has become, it's the big people with the big power with all the money controlling the rest of us, but we think we have more say than we actually do. And I think that that all comes down to what you're talking about. People are now wanting more of the real, because I think they're recognizing through 2020 and everything that has happened with COVID, with Trumpism, with all of this stuff. We've recognized, I mean, even with the Black Lives Matter and the all of that kind of stuff that went on. I mean, there's a number of things that have gone on in the last couple years that have just shown us where the power actually lies, who's actually in control. And like I feel like we're getting to this point where more and more people are even recognizing you can't have 100% loyalty to either party. You can't have like the fact that it's you can't be real and like expect, I guess I'll put it a different way, the way that the patriarchy controls everything. They are going to use what you think like your vulnerabilities are to market to you, kind of like the church does. And it's a kind of a manipulative tactic to get you to like side with whatever party, and it's going to happen through money, through power, through ads, through fear, through all the things that manipulate people. um but like neither one is the savior. Like neither uh there's no patriarchy that is going to save you. Like, and the more that we realize we have to use our own intellect and our own ability to process information, to recognize there's not a black and white world out there, things aren't all or nothing. Everybody has a different perspective, everybody comes from a different background, has a different story, has gone through their own trauma. Like the more we recognize these things and use our brain, like the more we realize that we do need people, we need community, we need to stop polarizing people based off of whatever side of the game they're on. And we just need to be able to be real. And like, I just, I think it's so interesting that that has kind of come full circle in the last couple years. So I feel like we're on the brink of more and more people recognizing that. But it's also very interesting because we're coming into another political season of people's campaigns, and you know it's going to be a whole bunch more mass marketing to try to drive people into that. So yeah, that's a really interesting point, that the patriarchy really is what comes down to basically us doubting ourselves and putting our control into someone else's hands.
Yeah, it's always going to promote that us versus them mentality.
Yeah.
And it's always going to be divisive. It's always going to put two people, two communities, two whatever in conflict.
Yeah.
Doesn't
More
necessarily have to be.
Yeah, no, the more we're connected to ourselves and knowing where we come from and why we have those beliefs or systems, and like having perspective, the more we can come to the table and understand that somebody else has their own set of like life experience and things that have created to them what their story is and what their truth is. And um wow, I just, yeah, thank you so much for sharing all of this, because I feel like you just embody goals. That's the best way I can explain it. Like, you are goals. Like,
Um,
and it's hard because I think everybody has their own unique sense of self, and like we want to get closer to that childlike us. And if somebody is watching this and is interested in some of your resources, is there a way for them to contact you or kind of reach out to you to move forward and trying to understand themselves and confidence in moving forward, and even if they're leaving a community or whatever their situation is?
yeah, and definitely, like, doesn't necessarily have to be the LDS religion. Like, I help anyone who's struggling with self-doubt and confidence. But yeah, they can go to my website, it's leahtaitelifecoach.com, or my Instagram, which is Leah Tait Life Coach.
Mm-hmm.
And the Gmail is the same as well. So Leah Tait Life Coach at gmail.com.